us for this Local Decision 2017 Candidate Spotlight. Today I'm sitting down with Circle Pines Mayor Dave Bartholomew, who is running for re-election. Dave is unopposed for re-election this year, but we thought we'd just come in and have a little chat and talk a little bit about, things that have gotten accomplished and maybe a little bit about what the next couple of years will hold for you and for the city of Circle Pines. And I want to just start with, why did you decide to run for re-election? Obviously you must think that there's still more work to be done for the city of Circle Pines. And, what does the next couple of years look like for you?
Well, first off, Ben, thank you very much for doing this, because this is the way a lot of people learn of what's going on in their city, by watching the show, so that's really important. I've been the mayor since the 2005 election, so it's been 12 years. I tell this to people that I originally believed in term limits, and they say, well, how come you're still here then if you believe in term limits? But the truth is that there is important work to be done. We are nearing about 3/4 of the way through our whole street construction plan. We basically are going to redo all the streets in the community, the water lines, the sewer lines and stuff. And so that's been a very important part. And we started doing that in 2006. And it's been moving along, and we have a couple more, 3 or 4 years left. So I'd like to see that get finished. We also have some big stuff coming up, I think, over the next year or two. We're doing a big water quality project on Golden Lake. Golden Lake is a great resource in our community, shared by a lot of the folks in Blaine and Lexington and Lino Lakes and stuff that come and use the park and stuff. Mm-hmm. The water is impaired, like I think it's half or 2/3 of the lakes in Minnesota have impaired water, too much nitrogen and phosphorus. And so we have a big project. We got a grant from the state to help us kind of start working on cleaning that up. So that's very important. The other piece is that I've found that, I really love this job. This is a job that pays $4,000 a year. I go to anywhere between 100 and 125 meetings and events a year. But it's a thing that really makes me feel fulfilled. I have a personal mission statement, which is an old Martin Luther quote. Martin Luther is having a 500th anniversary here in a few weeks of the Protestant Reformation, and Martin Luther said that God doesn't need your good works, but your neighbor does. And so my life is, and this isn't a politician sort of thing, it's just everything for me is about service. I've been very blessed in my life. I've had a great son, a great wife. Everything is very good, and I look around and I see people that don't quite have that same sort of capacities and abilities and blessings, and I think I should help. And so this is the spot I help, I think, in my world, is to serve my community this way.
I want to get into a few kind of nuts and bolts issues and things. Mm-hmm. The first one I want to talk about is development. Now, I know there's not a lot of space for development in Circle Pines, but I asked the candidates running for city council about development, and I've heard the same answer that I heard, I think, from the last batch of candidates, mm-hmm. and the batch maybe 2 years before that, the down under.
Right.
Every time I ask about development in Circle Pines, I hear about the down under. Yeah. Is anything ever going to happen with that property?
Well, I think so, and I hope so. A quick background: the Down Under is a bar along Lake Drive in Circle Pines, so it's very obvious, right there in the middle of the community. It closed, I don't know, it's not 6, probably 8 or 10 years ago, I think it closed. Kind of went out of business, and the property has been talked about. The folks that own it, we're going to redevelop it, we're going to fix it up, we're going to put a music cafe in, all these things over the years, and nothing really quite happens. The challenge is that it's a private sector business. If you want to move them out, they have rights. It's their property. So you could buy their property from them and write a check. And then now the city, if we ever did that, the city would own this land, and now what do we do? Mm-hmm. So we've struggled because we're pretty fiscally conservative in Anoka County and in Circle Pines, and so we don't really want to write a check. On the other hand, I went to a League of Cities conference where annually in Minnesota we do this, and I learned so much. And one of the things a person talked about is that when you're looking at your community, sometimes it's not those great things that people look at. The fact that you have the National Sports Center in Blaine, for example, or something. Sometimes the thing that really kind of denotes a community can be a negative thing. And that Down Under has gotten to be that. It has gotten to be this kind of this sliver that you just never quite gets fixed. And so my guess is that if we're sitting here 2 years from now, that we will have solved that piece of the puzzle. There is a couple of new council members who will be coming on because we have a couple of retirements of Deb O'Brien and Rich Runbeck. And so we're going to be looking at that brand new in January and February. We're going to do a strategic planning session with the new council, with our Parks Board and our Utilities Commission and the Planning Commission, and try to think about what could we do, what are we brave enough to do to try to make this work. So yeah, it's a very much a blight on our community, and we're looking at different opportunities to try to get that fixed once and for all.
Okay. It's been about 2 years now since Lino Lakes left the Centennial Fire District. So you've lived with that, being a two-city department for the last few years now. Do Circle Pines and Centerville need to go find a new partner, find another city to join to really make the district viable going forward, do you think?
Good question. I think the goal would be to say yes. The question then would be, well, who would be this new partner? A couple of challenges. First off, neighboring communities that are in different counties are very problematic. Otherwise, Hugo would be a natural partner. You know, you have Shoreview in Ramsey County, Hugo in Washington County. The way 911 calls are routed and work and stuff, that's just problematic. So now you're back into Anoka County. You have Lexington, which has their own fire department, an awful lot of pride. It has become, with the leadership they've had over the last 5-10 years, has become a very high quality department. And so they're proud of their department. Blaine, of course, is Blaine, Spring Lake Park, Mounds View, in that kind of collection there. So I'm not so sure there's other natural partners real by. However, when you think of partnering, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to, you know, have, for example, Lexington and Centennial Fire kind of merge. Somebody loses their name, somebody loses their identity. What I think the answer is going to be is trying to find ways to share services and do collaboration that leaves each department still standing, but saves money and provides increased capacity through maybe shared training, shared equipment, potentially even some elements of shared leadership that may not be a merger per se and adding a city, but it might get a lot of the same results. So yeah, because one of the things that happened is when Lino Lakes decided to leave the cooperative approach to fire department, the costs went up. And they went up for us, they went up for Centerville, and they went up for Lino Lakes. Kind of no matter what Lino Lakes says, they went up.
Okay. How has that impacted your budget? Have you had to cut back in other areas to fill that gap? How has that impacted your budget and taxes for residents?
Yep. Well, this year, for example, the fire department budget is flat, and so is the police department budget. And so if you have a house with the same value that you had before, your taxes are going to go down in Circle Pines. And we've done a lot of work to try to manage taxes as much as we can. We're a small town, we're all built out. We don't have all that new development, all the money that brings in. For our fire department, there's no doubt that the cost of it has increased a lot. We, as part of a 3-community deal, we had a pretty good deal going. You get that out of the way, and all of a sudden you have 2, and they're both kind of smaller towns. You still have a lot of the costs, so the price has gone up. We're managing it the best we can. We think it's stabilized now. You know, police and fire make up over half of almost any city in the state's budget. And so when you have police and fire costs and pressures there, it does squeeze out other things. Circle Pines has always been sort of a maintenance mode. You know, we try to improve our trails and our parks, we try to improve our streets, but it's all sort of in a thoughtful, kind of planned, strategic way, because we don't have enough money to just go and, you know, do all the streets or do this or that. So I don't know, I think that it's going okay, but there is no doubt that both police and fire would benefit from being part of something larger. And the trouble is that we have some great firefighters and some great police officers, and you want to make sure that in this discussion of what's the future look like, you have to remember to keep those folks front and center. You know, they provide service every day, they protect us every day. The job you and I have, we don't worry about, you know, pulling somebody over that might have a gun or whatever. These are dangerous jobs. They do important work. It's job one for any community, so we have to fund it and take care of it. And sometimes, yeah, that means we don't get to spend on some other areas.
Now, you mentioned earlier that the end is in sight for your street maintenance program. Like that, it was a 10-year program, is that correct?
It was basically a 15-year program, and we're about in year 11 now, 12.
Okay. When that comes to an end, what do you think is next? I mean, that's a chunk of money every year that's been dedicated to that. Is that money go into parks then, or trails to revitalize some of that area? As you look forward to that, as that money kind of coming off the books, do you think about maybe what could be next with those dollars?
Yeah, you do a couple things. First, when I first got elected, I went into our then city administrator, Jim Kyneth, who served us for 31 years, retired a year ago, has been replaced very well by Patrick Antonin, who does a tremendous job for us. And I went to Jim and I said, Jim, I have all these things I'd like to see us do. And he looked at this long list of stuff and he said to me, well, that's nice, but no. And I said, what do you mean no? I mean, I'm kind of the elected official. I'm the one who's supposed to figure out these lists. And he said, the trouble is that list is great, but it would cost way too much. In order to do that kind of stuff, you'd have to raise taxes a lot, and then you won't be getting reelected, and so then what happens to this plan? And I said, so great. So how do you get things done in a community? And of course, the answer is kind of piece by piece over time. And so I wanted to do a lot of things with parks and trails, and over the 10 years, 12 years I've been mayor, now we've gotten a lot of those things done. Next year we're going to be doing a little more chunk with trails and stuff. So when those street projects come off, there isn't, we'll have bonds to pay and stuff like that. There's never any really big chunk of free money that comes. A few years ago, we got an extra local government aid that I worked on at the Capitol with a bunch of mayors from all across the state to get a little more money in to help us. When we got that, we put a third of it into a tax cut, we put a third of it into some spending, and a third of it into reserves. That's just a solid kind of plan, I think, and approach. So the answer is we have a lot of things going on. Cleaning up the lake, a new library, which we haven't talked about yet, that's going to be just fascinating for a county library, and all kinds of things, but it's much more of a stable, steady, small growth, put a little money each year towards it, rather than kind of one big chunk of we should build something. Our community is in great shape. Well, people love Circle Pines, but there's a lot of things we'd like to kind of fix up and kind of maintain over time.
I was going to ask about the library next, actually, and I know that project is coming soon to get the expansion of the library done there. And what will that mean, not only for the library and for the people that visit the library, but kind of for the whole City Hall, civic campus area there? What will that mean for your city?
It's going to be great. It was a handful 8 years ago, 10 years ago that the library was looking to build a new facility. They bought some land in Lino Lakes. We made the strong push to kind of keep the library in Circle Pines and expand it. Didn't work out. They bought this land. The economy kind of tanks. All of a sudden, years later, they're back. We've always been appreciative of the County Library Services and stuff, and we've always been very supportive and positive with them. They're going to come back, and as it looks right now, they're bringing some final plans to the county board in the next month or two this fall. It means that they will start construction at the end of next summer. So when school starts, as I understand it, the library will kind of close for the school year. They'll be more than doubling the size of the library. We are making sure that it fits in with the campus look. The library, the post office, and City Hall are all beautiful brick buildings there. They have that campus feel you talked about. We're looking at what else the city can do, maybe with playgrounds or other amenities around there that would tie into the library. But that library, and we're also going to be paving a trail from the library over to Lexington Avenue and Lake Drive to make it more accessible for people maybe with disabilities and kids riding bikes. So we're working with the county quite a bit on that. We're real excited about it. We think the library is a really central part of any kind of community. So between the library there and now the food shelf is in the basement of City Hall, tremendously successful, a lot of investment and support from like Connexus buying big fridges and freezers for them. It's all a beautiful place, and so yeah, it's going to fit right in. We're going to work with them to make it happen, and it's another example of partnership. We would never be able to afford a library of our own, but we can be a good host for the county library that serves all the communities in the area.
Great. Now, I've heard you say a couple times tonight that people really like living in Circle Pines. Why? What makes the community special?
Yeah. Well, I think it's a bunch of things. First off, you have great schools, and I don't think you have a good community without really good schools. The Centennial School District's always winning awards, and it's tremendous. Secondly, we do take care of infrastructure and maintenance kind of things. I mean, we take care of our streets, we take care of the community, we try to kind of polish it up a little bit, and that's important. People want to be proud, and they want to know that if they've got potholes and streets in disrepair, there's a plan. And so we are very thoughtful and very planning in that case. You know, we'd always like to have taxes lower, there's no doubt, but you have a small town with not a lot of big businesses paying a big share. So the taxes are the best we can do. We communicate quite a bit, and it has a lot of neighborhood kind of feel to it. So, and there's different neighborhoods, different parts. You have the lake there with a big park with a lot of kids that come to swim and fish all the time. So it has all that small town feel, but yet you're only 15 minutes away from Minneapolis or St. Paul. And it's a safe community, and you got great fire department service. So those you put all that pieces together, good schools, good services, nice neighborhoods, a clean kind of community with good people. I think that's the magic formula.
Now, even though you say it's a great community and people really enjoy living there, there can be things that are divisive. Politics in its nature can be polarizing and divisive. Yep. We see this in many different avenues. You look all across our country, whether it be race, religion, socioeconomic class, politics. What do you do to build unity? What do you do to bring people together? What do you do as the mayor to maybe bring the council together when the council is disagreeing, or just the community as a whole? What do you do to build unity in Circle Pines?
That's a great question, and again, being the mayor is a part-time, nights and weekends, $4,000 a year job. I have a full-time day job, and that I've been working in conflict resolution for about 7 years now. And the first 6, I was working up in Coon Rapids for the Anoka County version of mediation services. And a year ago, I went down to the state. And one of the things I do for the state of Minnesota is I work on civic engagement, community engagement. I work on conflict resolution on large, high-level, very visible public policy issues, things you read about in the papers. That's the kind of stuff I do. And one of the most interesting parts I've noticed personally is, for example, I have a council member, Rich Runbeck, who ran against me last time. And I was able to win, but we've had kind of a challenging relationship in the 8 years that he's been on the council. And he's retiring now, and I wish him well. And one of the things I've noticed is that you can sit and think that you're all about unity, you can think that you're going to be the one who doesn't get into fights and cause troubles, but when they start happening, you find yourself getting caught right up in them. And that was happening between Rich and I. And I had to do a lot of work over the last handful of years to try to better understand, first off, to listen better. I'm a talker, and I needed to learn to listen. And so when I start listening, when I start thinking about the common things we share, we live in the in the same neighborhood. We're proud of our schools, our community, and things. You start looking at that, and then you start to try to think about what their perspective is. Bottom line is that as Rich gets prepared to retire from the city council, and he'll probably watch this and shake his head, but he's actually been wonderful for me to work with because I've learned a lot about myself and about how to be a little more thoughtful, a little more patient. I'm not perfect. I have a lot of flaws. But he's made me better, and so I've taken that now, and I'm part of a team that works with the League of Minnesota Cities and folks across the state on how to be more civil, how to engage people on difficult questions, and an awful lot of it is people want to be heard, and they just never feel that they're heard or that they're valued. And if you can sit down and understand that this whole thing is about relationships, and if you can try to build those relationships, try to be a little more thoughtful and careful, not be so quick to criticize, all those kind of things you learned as a kid growing up, it turns out that your mother was right? And so that's the kind of stuff that really excites me. I work with troubled cities that have councils in strife. I do training for these kind of things, and I think it's probably the one thing that I'm really the most proud of is that I've been able to learn that and to personally I think become better at dealing with those kind of situations. And that's we all need to work on that.
Well, I want to thank you for taking some time to come in and just talk with us a little bit about what you see for the next couple of years in Circle Pines as you both look back and look forward. And best of luck as you continue to serve as mayor for the next 2 years.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I want to remind you all that you can always head to northmetrotv.com for complete local decision coverage. It's all there for you, candidate biographies, as well as other spotlights like this with candidates, or if our full debates with candidates, such as the candidates running for Circle Pines City Council. You can see that on northmetrotv.com. I've been your host, Ben Hale. Thank you for watching.